Hello, everyone. This is Xavier Billingsley from EH Consulting. Welcome to another episode of the Proactive Project Manager podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Agile Project Management. Yes. I'm excited about this one. So, in this podcast, we have a special guest, Kevin Sellers. Kevin is the CEO of C2 Consulting. Kevin has over 20 years in the field of project management. He has earned his degree in construction engineering management from Purdue, and he has earned almost every certification you can think of. I mean, really. He also has his MBA from Indiana Wesleyan University. Now, one of the things I admire most about Kevin is his zeal for knowledge and passion for helping others perform more efficiently. Just to read a few of his certifications that he's earned, Kevin has his Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. He is a Safe Agilist. He has his Safe Dev Ops certification. He is a certified product owner. He has his Kanban certification, and he is a certified Agile coach. Welcome to the show, Kevin. Is there anything else you would like me to add?
No, Xavier, thank you. That was an awesome intro. I'm very excited to be here.
All right, great. All right, so I'm just going to jump right in. I do have some questions for you, Kevin. So the first question I have is the $1 million question. What is Agile Project Management?
That's a great question, Xavier. To talk about agile project management, you can't not talk about traditional project management, right? Which we all know, those in the industry know, is the standard bearer for great project management delivery. Um, when you think about agile project management, it's basically a general approach used in software. It relies heavily on teamwork, collaboration. If you think of the Agile Manifesto and the meeting in Colorado in 2001, which birthed the Agile Manifesto and the term agile, um, it really got its beginning naming and nuance at that time. But there was a previous time where it wasn't called agile; it was called agility, which is sort of the broader term. So that's where agile came from a software perspective, and kind of where we're at today.
Great, thank you for that. Now, what I'm curious about, I know you have Agile and you have Scrum, and then I know you have your SAFe certification, which is Scaled Agile. What makes Scaled Agile different from Scrum?
Well, skilled agile, different from Scrum. Scrum has to do with one team working collaboratively, right, in an iterative approach to deliver some sort of product or project functionality, if you per se, if you're talking about coding. Safe is the ability to take multiple Scrum teams and coordinate across multiple teams the delivery in an iterative fashion. It also looks at not only the agile space and the different types of frameworks to deliver a software. It also takes into account lean, which lean gets into more traditional. Think of manufacturing and cars. The Toyota way back in the day when people were talking about the efficiencies of cars, it sort of changed the paradigm of how we make cars back in the day to now. It takes both of those principles and practices and merges it into one way to deliver iterative development in a quicker fashion than waterfall does.
Okay, now I do have a question. Now, some say that project managers do not have a place with when it comes to scaled agile. Can you help me understand that? Is that something that you agree with? And what are you seeing? Because I know you deliver agile projects consistently. That's what where you're an expert. What are you seeing in the industry as far as the project managers and where they actually fit when it comes to scaled agile?
Now, from a skill agile perspective, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought is you typically would sort of take a traditional project manager and you almost have to repurpose his skill set in a sense that that original skills that you learned in PMI and project management and PMBOK is still relevant in a lot of industries that need that sequential delivery. Those will always be around. So project management will always be around. When it comes to safe, project managers have to evolve. Being a traditional project manager is almost like flipping you 360 on your head to do safe, because to think of traditional project management, it is command and control, right? Where you have a certain amount of resources they need to deliver. You get to monitor and track when they deliver it. You give them deadlines. You work with other matrix organizations where you work with other resources to do certain things. In safe and in agile, you have scrum teams. Within those teams, their only obligation is to deliver what they're specified to do. There is no multiple resource managers. There is no matrix organization. So when you say about traditional project management versus PMs moving to safe, it's more so a culture shift and more of a paradigm shift of how you think of delivering something than it is about PMs not being valued or not being used in safe. They're used in safe. A lot of PMs become quote unquote senior scrum masters or scrum masters, in the sense where you're now working still with a team and you're delivering a product, but you're doing it at an incremental level, using different tools and techniques than your traditional scrum, than your traditional project management values.
Okay, so that brings up another question, Kevin. So you said that the PM will become somewhat of like a super scrum master, so to speak, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from leaders in the industry. But what about when it comes to like those project manager technical competencies that we're known for? For example, when even though it's a scaled agile delivery, that's our methodology, what about the budget, the forecasting? What about risk management? And I know that the scrum master is supposed to capture and work on impediments from the dev team, but what about those overall risks? What happened to those? What about a schedule? Can you help me explain some of those things? And when it comes to like agile projects, is there still a place for those traditional project management tools and deliverables?
So, I'm glad that's a great question, Xavier. What you're going to find, there's a lot of misnomers. People think because you do agile that you lose a lot of that. You don't. It's just different in the sense that from a planning perspective, we still plan even though we're practicing safe and sometimes extreme Kanban XP. We kind of mix the methodologies together at the places I've worked at. What you'll find is that delivery of planning is done, but it's done not on a holistic. Here's the whole project I'm delivering, and it takes me 9 months, 15 months to deliver. It's I'm going to plan out these next couple of months, and here's what I'm going to deliver. Think of it as chunking, where I'm only going to deliver a certain piece. And the reason why that's important and why you don't do a long-term plan is because what Agile does that traditional project management doesn't is that Agile allows for the ability to pivot, to change with the industry or with external as well as internal forces that may force you to change. So, for example, if you think of Chase, and most people know Chase as a brick and mortar space, right? But also people know Chase now by their mobile app, right? We're everywhere. You hear the commercials about what they do. So traditional project management got Chase to the brick and mortar. But if you're talking about the moving to the app and being able to bank anywhere and not have to worry about having a storefront, which allows you to gather more customers and capture a greater market share, that is where the agile piece goes that traditional can't go, right? So it's like a leap off to the next level, and that's where you'll find where the planning still happens. It's just at a smaller level and for a smaller chunk of work. You still do risk. I still document risk and issues. We call them work items. We'll stick them, in some sort of tool for tracking and measuring risk and issues along with the development. We cover those on a weekly basis. We talk about them, sometimes even on a daily basis in our daily stand-ups. So risk and issues still happen. Planning still happens. Now, budgets are a little bit different. Every organization is different when it comes to budgets. And you know this, Xavier, being in the business for as long as you've been, like me, is that and what you're finding in some spaces now, when it comes to agile, they'll fund a team for the year and say, "Hey, I have I have X amount of resources that I know who they are, I know what they can do, and I know what they're going. I don't know what they're going to work on, but I know for this year I got 10 people. Let's say these 10 people are going to do X amount of work for the next 12 months, and they fund that team for that year. They don't fund them by the project that they're delivering. They fund them by the number of work hours they're going to put into doing different types of work. And that's a fundamental shift in how project management traditionally is done versus agile. Because in traditional, you have a project, you have a business owner, you have a person who's sort of the major stakeholder who's spearheading that work and is the voice for that project. You have the same thing happening in business today, but what's changing is you don't fund a project, you fund more of a product. And that product has incremental development that is being pushed out throughout the year or multiple years. And that team you have is a fixed team. It doesn't change. The people don't come in and out. You don't deal with different managers. It is that team. And that team has within it all the capabilities to do inception all the way through to production and operational support, all within that team or that series of teams you're talking about safe. So that is the major shift from risk and issues, planning, and as well as financing. The financing has been the last thing to try to catch up to agile because it's different. For a long time, companies couldn't figure out how to finance an agile team because you're funding people, not projects. You're funding products, and you're funding different incremental functionality that will be delivered throughout the year.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you for that. That is a great answer, Kevin. But what about what you just mentioned? You basically talked about agile and those project management activities from a development perspective when it comes to IT. If you have a scaled, you're using a scaled or an agile methodology to deliver a project. Some projects you have more than just an IT component. Like for example, I've worked on plenty of product development projects where we're creating a product, a brand new product that involves both business as well as an IT component. What about those business activities? How do you streamline those activities into an agile plan?
Great question. So that is what SAFe takes into account. So traditional Scrum does not take into account the bigger picture, right? I call it the end to end. That's why I say, like, inception, like business marketing comes up with a idea that came from the customers that gets formed into requirements. That requirement then gets, pushed down to development teams that do the work. Development teams do the coding, test. It looks good. Toss it over the wall to operations team. Kind of does some knowledge transfer to them to get them, to be called, quote unquote, what we call level one responses to when it's in production and it's been productionized and working. What you're finding now is and that's why SAFe is even important and why it has evolved and has put a great foothold into development of how we deliver in this age today, is that SAFe takes into account the business aspect of it. So SAFe has different levels. It has kind of a team level, then it has a program level, and then it has a portfolio level. All right, and in those levels is where you start getting more business involvement. So at the project level, you don't really get a lot with the business involved. The business is already baked to, like, kind of come up with the ingredients, right? And the development team is baking the cake, right? And then putting the icing on it when it moves over to operations, right? The operations team kind of puts the icing on it, and here's this beautiful cake, right, that people are going to eat and love. what you're finding is, and what they found is in Agile is that was the piece that was missing. Yeah, we were great at development and getting things out iteratively pretty quickly and putting teams together using the different methodologies in Agile. What they found was that the business, the amount of input that they had wasn't as much. So what you find in SAFe is we do what we call iterative planning or PI planning, right? That planning is like it lasts about 3 or 4 days. Most organizations go as short as one day. Some go as long as 4 or 5 days. It's where everybody's in the room: marketing, business, accounting, development, operations. Even if sometimes they'll even have um, partners, stakeholders who are outside of our particular business that may be early adopters of what we're going to be pushing out, involved in this 3 day meeting that lasts all day. There's an agenda put together, and they literally map out what they're going to do, who's responsible for what, and they use kind of this pin and yarn sort of concept where you basically put all your ideas on a board and you map them across with strings about who's going to do what and when it's going to be needed. You not only look at and get all of the industries that are going to be involved or all of the areas that are impacted, you also look at the timing and the dependencies across not just IT, but business, right? That is where SAFe has sort of took it to another level from Agile, right? It's moved up another level. It's up the game because now they're saying, hey, we can go from inception to production with business involvement through all of this and deliver you a quality product. And typically, SAFe does around anywhere from 10 to 12 sprints, and they're traditionally about 2 weeks on average. Agile talks about going between 1 and 4 weeks. If you get into extreme, it's 1 to 6 weeks. If you take that concept of the framework of how to deliver it and the cadence that they deliver on, they can deliver literally a new functionality, a new product within a 3 month time frame, which is unheard of. If you look at what we did 10 years ago, when we talk about delivering something in 9 months, 15 months, 9 months was seen as aggressive and game changing. Now we can deliver new content literally in weeks. And that's the advantage. And it's not just about software anymore. Businesses are starting to adapt agility as well and looking at their processes and how can they be more integrated with the process of delivering content to our customers.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Thank you. That makes sense. So, another question I do have for you, Kevin, is when people think of project managers, they think of a schedule. Typically, that should be one of the things that, as a project manager, you should be proficient at doing. Where does a schedule fit when it comes to agile, scaled agile? I mean, does it disappear? Because I know at this point, you have all of your requirements and everything is in the backlog, and you're creating user stories, and you're doing that incremental development as you mentioned earlier. Where does a project plan fit? Is it something that you do at the portfolio level, or do you just not do a project plan or project schedule at all when you're delivering your project via an agile methodology?
So if you think about the traditional project plan that a traditional project manager would do for a pretty massive project, right? Overall, that then you're looking at the portfolio level, right? Because they're looking at long-term implications, long-term impacts of a product that they're going to put out. When you look at it from the team level, right? Because there's levels to this, is that at the team level, you're still scheduling, just that your schedule is shorter, right? You're looking at pretty much about a 3 month window. At the program level, they're looking at probably for the year, what are the things we're looking to work on? What are the things we're looking to deliver? When do we think we can deliver it? That input comes from the development teams. Because the thing about traditional project management and about Agile that I think a lot of people tend to kind of have a little bit of difficulty with understanding how it's changed is before we had somewhat a little bit of power as a project manager from a traditional standpoint because you're in charge with the dollars and the budgets and the schedules that you have to deliver for the business, right? That is your customer. In Agile, you as a project manager or quote unquote a Scrum Master or a senior Scrum Master are not really in charge of saying when something's going to be done from the standpoint of you work with the teams and those product owners and the and the development teams to say, hey, here's the functionality we're trying to do this year. Go away to your labs and figure out how you think we can do this, right? You're more so telling them kind of when we need it and what we need from a schedule standpoint, but they're going to tell you when they're going to deliver it. You don't tell them when they're going to deliver it. And the reason why this is why that's a like a paradigm shift, and you think about traditional project management is because we're not the ones doing the work. Agile sort of takes its tenements from, if you think of and you know much about lean and getting the green belt and black belt, they call it going to the Gemba. People who are who are on the ground who are doing the work are the best to tell you when the work can be done, or even to innovate that work to tell you how much better it could be when we deliver it. Um, what they found in all these studies and a lot of case studies and Harvard Business Review and a lot of other project management, even PMI itself, if you look at their website and look at a lot of the Agile Manifesto work and also the PMI work combined, they're delivering content faster doing Agile than they are doing traditional waterfall. And that's not just in the IT space anymore. It's evolved. Even in manufacturing, there's project management in manufacturing. You'll find that wherever project management has ever been, the agile space has come behind it and sort of revolutionized how you do it and what you do. So scheduling, to your original question, still happens. It's just that a portfolio person in that safe format is looking at the long term. But depending on what level you're at, you're going to be looking at a different schedule, whether it be a short 3-month period, a year period, or however long the life cycle of the product.
Okay, so you mentioned that the team, instead of what one of the differences is that in traditional project management, we tell the team when to have the work done. And when it comes to scale agile projects, the team tell us when the work will be done. So what about when you have integrations? That's when I see the complexity coming in, because let's say you have the mobile team development, and they're telling you that they can have this done in 3 sprints. Okay, and that puts us, what, let's say they have 2 week sprints. So 6 weeks later, we'll have the development done for our mobile piece. But what if there's a dependency on some other IT system or business process that has to happen before then or after then? What we need those dependencies to match or to link up. The mobile team wouldn't have that type of insight. How do you handle situations like that?
That's an awesome question. So, then we talked about the Scrum team and the makeup of the team, and then we talked about safe.
Mm-hmm.
In that safe meeting, the mobile team is already there. So in that original planning, it took that 1 to 3 or 4 days. That was already baked. That was already baked into it when they were going to deliver it. So in this meeting, and literally, that's a discussion for another day. Like an actual PI planning, it's a great energy and synergy about those, right? Because you have everybody involved in one place, whether it be all remote now or whether it be traditionally when I used to do some of them for my other clients that I had at the time. We do it all face to face. They fly people in from Europe, all the places where we have business at. Who was all impacted with getting the room, and we walk through this, and they map out dependencies. And because they were doing 2-week or 3-week intervals, they would say, "Hey, team, this is when I need to have this." So you're, in a sense, when I say that they're telling us when they're going to have it, what you're going to find is you may say, "Hey, I need this by this date," and as a project manager, a lot of times because we are not coders or developers, I may not understand the complexity of it, right? And that's when the technical people will tell you, "Hey, no, that can't be done in 2 weeks. That's going to take like 4 weeks." And as a project manager, sometimes you come back and say, "No, I need this in 2 weeks. Do whatever you got to do, but I need this in 2 weeks." What you're going to find is in Agile and in Safe, they'll say, I need this in 2 weeks. Oh, but no, it's going to take 4. Okay, what can you give me in 2 weeks? Well, what can I work with in 2 weeks? So what that team will do is give them something to start, so that that other team doesn't have to wait 4 weeks, but they're kind of be going to be coding in parallel. The biggest thing you'll find in Agile is there's a lot of parallel tracks running at the same time. In traditional waterfall, it's sequential. You're waiting. There is no waiting in Agile. Literally, you're working in different areas, and then you're moving code in. And to your question about, well, wait a minute, what about interdependencies? Well, that is accounted for in that planning, but also the part that a lot of people are starting to realize when it comes to traditional Agile project management is the underpinning of technology, right? Has been the evolution of how Agile is taken advantage of. So, for instance, one of the places I worked at, we had like different teams doing different things in the dev environment. They then promote into int, right? And that's where you tend to get your breakage, your bugs, you find issues. Within SAFe, there is a refactoring period, or they'll call it a hackathon or innovation period. Typically, in that like 4 to 5 weeks of 2 week sprints, they call them, there is about 3/4 of the way through a innovation or a hack where they actually take care of all the refactoring of code and bugs and issues. But throughout that whole process, every 2 weeks, you're pushing code like every day. Literally, our teams push code into dev and int on a daily basis. In traditional project management and in traditional delivery of, say, functionality from a software perspective, you don't push code in until you've done all the coding, tested it, made sure nothing's wrong, and then moved it in. So you literally will take, say, 6 months when I've delivered something in 6 months that has actually less bugs and less issues, because it's the whole thing fail first, fail fast thing. In Agile, I don't know if you ever heard that term. It's a word thrown around a lot in Agile. Fail first, fail fast. Like fail fast, fail first. Because the faster I can find an issue and deal with it and fix it, then the better I am at moving on to the next thing versus I find it later on in the process. And you got to remember this too. All this is driven by the world we're in and the competition between different competitors in your industry and now competitors outside of your industry, right? Because now we have disruptors where other people coming from other technologies can come in and disrupt your business. In order to be efficient and effective and to be agile and be fast at delivering quality content, you have to have the ability to incrementally push out products or functionality if it's software, or products if it's a business. If you cannot do that, you will not be successful and you might not be around long. And I know that sounds harsh, but it is a true reality that we're going through right now. It is agility, and even that's starting to become something of old news, because now we have DevOps and we have digital transformations. Now I won't get into the details of that, but that is like the next evolution off of Agile and SAFe. So traditional project management will always have a place, but if you're going to be evolving with how technology and the advent of AI and machine learning and autonomous things, vehicles and robotics and all these things, because you can do things much faster and repetition and cut out waste and cut out defects and issues early on, because you can do a lot of automation and early testing of ideas and functionality. That pace is so fast that traditional project management, from a traditional standpoint, your sequencing is so much faster that if you're a traditional PM, you may not be able to keep up with how it's changing and how fast the change is coming.
Okay, and this actually is a perfect segue to my next question. So, as a project manager who really doesn't have a lot of experience delivering agile projects, what can they do to be on the cutting edge, to be able to come into an organization and add value right away? What types of things do they need to be aware of? What new technologies? do they need to be aware of, so that they can be a value add right off the bat?
Yes. So I know I guess I'll state this. I think this is probably my third time saying this, just because I just want to make sure people understand that traditional project management isn't going anywhere. You're still going to need those, right? They still operate a lot in construction. But traditional project management will always be around. It never will change, because even in construction, even though they're delivering things a little bit faster, it's still traditionally suited for project management in the traditional sense of work and how work can be done. Because with technology, you can actually, do multiple things at different times. In construction, you can't, right? So from an industry standpoint, certain industries will always have project management from a traditional standpoint, but certain industries, it may be a different. If I'm talking about out of 100, in software, it may be 80% agile, 20% traditional. But in construction, it might be the opposite: 80% traditional and 20% agile. So people will try to get faster where they can in whatever industry you're in. But I don't think that traditional project management will ever go away. So those tenements and getting that skill set is always going to be a value. Like that, there's no question in my mind that'll always be a value. Now, to your point, to your question about what can a traditional person who went through PMI and that's what they've learned, that's what they know, to kind of evolve and change. Um, they for me, what I did was, um, I personally did some free projects with some nonprofit organizations on my own time, because for me, I kind of saw the writing on the wall when I was working with back in 2012. When I was working at a particular company, and I was doing traditional project management, but it was this new thing going on, and I started reading about it and hearing about it. And I said the company introduced, I think, Scrum Masters to us, and I was like, oh, okay, what's this about? And that was my way of getting into the agile space. But for those who are working in the traditional space and they don't have the ability to do that, doing projects for nonprofit or for organizations get into it, that is probably your best way to kind of keep learning, doing what you're doing, and getting that other skill set. The other part is doing a lot of reading, learning, reading the Agile Manifesto, learning about Scrum. Not that you want to become a Scrum Master, but just understanding what Scrum is. Scrum is just one of the methodologies under Agile, but it's the most widely used, right? You also have extreme programming. You also have Kanban. You have, some people call it Scrum Bond. Some people start mixing methodologies, but there's all these different methodologies that help with delivering not only software but products in general. Because XP was used in the building of air jet fighters for the military. So just learning and understanding the history of where Agile came from and what it's about would be, I say, first and foremost, is get the learning, read on books, articles, and then you get your hand on, read it, learn it from reliable sources. Maybe take some courses, one or two courses to get an understanding in Scrum, Agile. So a lot of these courses are free now. A lot of content is free online that you can get from PMI, from Scrum Alliance, a lot of different places, Scrum.inc. I mean, there's so many different organizations that do it now, and the content is there. The second part, I guess the third part of that, one is getting their education and knowledge. Second is getting somewhere to be able to practice it, right? While you're still trying to obviously, earn money and take care of your family, it's a job, right? You went and got a degree and certification in your field for project management. You want to make sure that you're, being able to use your skill set. But the other part would be eventually is to transition in one of those roles, and you're still going to apply a lot of things that you still learned in project management traditionally. That doesn't change. I still do budgeting. I still do schedules. I still do planning. I still do risk and issues. It just depends at a different level. So those would be the three things I would say. Books, get some training, and try to do some nonprofit work if you are working full time doing project management in the traditional setting. If there's any opportunities in your company that allows you to do it, like I got when I was in 2012, and they offered up Scrum and saying, "Hey, this will help, give you another, arsenal and another tool in your tool set to work with to deliver and be of value to the organization." If your organization is doing that or willing to pay for you to get that, I would do it. And it's not about taking it to use it more so. Some people I know have taken it and don't use it at all. And like, Kevin, it was a waste. Some people take it and they're like, okay, it gives me another skill set. So let me go ahead and get some background in it so that now I have another selling point of what I can do. Not only can I do traditional project management, I also can do agile project management. So it actually gives you a more marketable skill set.
All right, it's a great answer. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so my final question for you, as you mentioned, you're pretty much always on the cutting edge of what's new in the industry. What are you seeing happening in the market that can make PMs more marketable?
Well, definitely we talked about just the Scrum or the Agile certification are definitely going to make you more marketable.
Hmm.
Because what you're finding now is, you know, the agile or agility is the word you hear now a lot of times. Agility covers not just software; it's talking about any industry and all areas of your business. That's the agile is kind of the threshold, but to understand how to improve businesses, not only from a IT perspective, but also from a business perspective, I think lean certifications are like dead on for that. You're spot on for that kind of stuff.
What
My
about things like digital transformation and those types of are there like certifications or any type of training that a PM can pursue in order to be more knowledgeable about those types of things?
Yeah. So digital transformations are kind of in its infancy stages from the sense of there aren't really very many certifications. I've kind of looked around. There are classes you can take, but I've seen no real certifications from like legitimate places, that would be worth your while and carry value on your resume. I just took a course um, that I'm actually no in the process of taking right now with the MIT has a few what they call executive sort of non-traditional courses that you can take because you're not a student around digital transformation, AI leadership. So a lot of that stuff is out there for you to take, and it's more so like a course that you take over a 6 week period or 8 week period. Not to get certified, but it's more so like a certificate to say you understand and you've learned kind of how it works in the industry. Those have been great. University of California, Berkeley has one. MIT, Harvard, even. It's like a consortium of like these Ivy League schools that offer these executive courses and those types of things.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, Kevin, I think this will conclude our interview for today. Is there anything else you would like to add before we adjourn our interview?
Yeah, Xavier, I'd like to thank you for having me and be able to spend time with you and your audience. It has been a pleasure. Um, I've known you for quite a bit of time now, and as usual, you're always doing awesome, extraordinary things, and just proud to be associated with the podcast and getting a chance to share what I know with your audience.
Wow, great. Thank you so much, Kevin. I mean, the information that you brought to this podcast today has been extremely informative. That is a great testament to your skills and your ability and your zeal and zest for learning and helping others grow. And as you mentioned earlier, be the best selves that they can possibly be. I really appreciate you coming onto the show today and spending time with me. Um, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I put your information in the notes of the podcast so that, if it's okay with you, if anybody want to reach out to you, ask questions, I'll definitely do that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Really appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Kevin. And everyone, thank you again for joining and listening to the podcast. And everyone, have a beautiful day. Thank you.